What does it mean to be a clairvoyant?
Ooh, right off the bat. For me, I use that term because people have often heard of it, but I'm using clairvoyant skills, clairaudience skills, claircognizant skills all the time. So it's all of these, and all people have the ability to develop those skills if they want to. For when I use particularly clairvoyant, it's the ability to see, right? Isn't it clear seeing in French, something like this? Um, so its ability to see in, for me, into the energy imprint. That's my experience of it. Some clairvoyants will use the term meaning more, I see the future, I see what's possible for you. And certainly sometimes I see that, but it wasn't my interest to develop that part of the skill. It happened naturally for me to see inside people's bodies and in the emotional energetic system and the mental energy and the spiritual system.
When you say develop, you chose to develop, what does that mean? Because when I'm choosing to play, for example, basketball, I'm
Yep.
going to classes, I'm spending time working on my free throws, working on
Right.
footwork, etc.
Yeah,
What does it
yeah.
mean to develop clairvoyant skills or clairaudience skills?
Well, I didn't know that I wanted to develop that, but once I started meditating as a kid, I wasn't sure why I was doing that, but I knew I needed to calm myself. I was anxious. I needed help sleeping. I'm 19 years old, right? So I start meditating and finding my way. Then I realized something about intuition. I try to read about it. I'm like, what is that? How come I kind of know what's going to happen sometimes or get a sense to do this and not that? So that happened all very gradually. All this time, I'm a counselor. I'm a young woman in my 20s. Then, as I'm sitting with people, and I've also started doing yoga and I've started meditating and I'm teaching yoga, but as I'm sitting with people therapeutically, I start to really have strong hunches, or you could just say intuition, knowing something about what they've said, or that wasn't true what they said, or they're not telling me the whole story, or. And so I wanted to develop that more. The first time, I didn't really want to develop seeing into people's bodies, but it happened to me again in the therapeutic context where I had this hunch like I've got to ask this woman about her shoulder. It had no context to the story, didn't make sense whatsoever. So after fighting with my own self in my mind about that, I eventually asked her. I knew her well. It kind of came out of left field, but it turns out she had a lot of pain there. We ended up working somatically with the heart and the body. So I began to trust more and more my own knowing in those silent spaces as I was listening to people. And then it happened that I just would kind of see or be drawn to a certain area of the body. Something's dark over there, or something's heavy over there, down in that hip. So, um, because that was happening and I was doing yoga and meditating, I was like, okay, I want to understand more about this. That was my first intent. I want to understand what's the point? How can this help me? How can this help others? I was just kind of open and curious. And then, of course, I knew about psychics and stuff, and I wanted to know my own future. There's that kind of ego part that's like, tell me what's going to happen. When am I going to meet this person? What's going to happen with my career? But um, I often saw that that was my own ego. I just could see over and over again that it was helpful in the therapeutic content. So that had me want to develop it and understand my own body more. So it meant more time meditating. It meant asking questions. It meant talking with my mentor. It meant reading more about it. I studied energy work, hands-on, and yeah, I studied energy medicine. I looked for whatever material I could find.
See, this is fascinating. And the immediate question that comes to my mind is, are you interacting with the superconscious or the subconscious, stuff like that?
Yeah.
Like are you when you say you're not using your rational brain, you're using your intuitive brain. And
Mhm.
are you just listening to signals from your subconscious, or do you think you're accessing maybe a different level of your consciousness, what people sometimes call the superconscious, or maybe you have a different word or term for it?
Yeah, I know the term superconscious. I just don't use it, but I'm accessing my soul self or my pure self beyond the ego self, beyond the rational mind, beyond the patterned mind, patterned thought mind. Um, and it just knows. It knows what to do or where to go. Um, it's the heart mind, you could also say. But I think of it as the pure self. It's like the highest self.
So let's take a bookmark here and just kind of broaden everything out because
Sure.
immediately you and I are, but you're much more versed in this area of expertise than I am, but I'm also on this pathway. But a lot of
Okay.
people hear these words, energy,
Yeah.
superconscious,
Yeah.
subconscious, energy medicine, and
Mhm.
they get hesitant. They maybe cringe. They don't think
Sure.
it's a real thing or it's a valid or scientific pursuit, let's say.
Yeah.
Um, how do we get people to understand? We're not trying to, be a cult and incentivize them to join or anything. We're
Of
not trying
course.
to persuade them.
There's nothing to
We're,
join.
there's nothing to join, but what is this kind of thing that we're doing? What is this pathway that we're on? Do we call it spirituality or do we call it something else?
I don't even think we need to call it spirituality. I know many people do, and I used to, but why? We're on the path of understanding ourselves. On the path of knowing who we truly are. We're on the path of understanding our potential. And so people, I'm in my 20s, 35 years ago, I'm reading Richard Gerber's book called Energy Medicine. I didn't know anything about that. I was traditional psychology training, right? And I was curious. Oh, okay. So this kind of is explaining a bit about what these old yogic texts say. Oh, so that was interesting to me. Okay, we're making a link between ancient religions or spirituality and some science. And I like seeing that link. So I don't think we're trying to tell anybody anything. Each person has to find their own understanding of themselves in their own time. But there's no pretending. There's no way you can say we're not an energy body. It's like it's science. Like anybody can find that in all kinds of reputable scientific places if they wish to. It's just that the mass consciousness doesn't know that yet.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing you brought up, the mass consciousness. What is preventing, and this is one of the meta narratives that we will follow, this current
Okay.
point in time that we're in right now. It
Yeah.
seems like we talk about being in modernity, we're at the most advanced state in human history, human civilization. I've actually taken a major step back at agreeing with that and coming to consensus. I don't think we're the
Right.
most advanced. I don't
Right.
think that we really understand what's going on, here. Just for example, if I may go on a little
Go,
tangent, but
please.
there's a tech entrepreneur named Balaji Srinivasan,
Okay.
and he comes up with the Budapest problem in the context of biotechnology. And so his riff goes, we can understand what's going on in Budapest or Bangalore within seconds. I can just search it up and get access to that information. But
Yep.
I can't understand what's going on right underneath my skin, a couple
Right.
inches from me.
Right.
And that's such a fascinating problem because
It
it
is.
is actually, in the context of what you and I are talking about, it is exactly that, the following and pursuit of the external rather than the internal state of a human or of
Right.
humanity as well, that has taken us away and contributed, I think, to a lot of the problems in our world. So I just want
Yeah.
to say that I have ways we can go, but if you
I'm
want to
with you.
comment on that.
Yeah, well, I just am in agreement with you. Yes, absolutely. We focus so much on the external and what we can see and what's out there versus truly an inquiry into who am I? What is this?
So for starters, when you're talking about, I guess finding clairvoyance or
Yeah.
following that, there's also a meta thing of you had to listen to your clairvoyance in order to find that, which is interesting in and of
Yes.
itself. How did you have the courage and the confidence to listen to that? Because again, we know that everybody has that ability, but not
Mhm.
everybody has the confidence or the clarity
Right. Or the
to listen
courage.
to themselves.
A
Yeah.
lot of people are scared of knowing themselves and scared of their own, let's say, emotions or scared of their own thoughts. It's uncomfortable because all these thoughts we have each day, they're in conflict with one another. People want to think of themselves as a loving person, yet they have thoughts of hatred. And so they fight with these things. It's like, I don't want to, so let's just try to avoid it. That's kind of one of the common responses. Let's just try to avoid it. So looking inward hasn't always been an appealing thing. Um, for me, somehow, I guess it's just the nature of my soul that came into this body. I was raised in a Christian environment, a religious environment, but I was raised in a family of faith. So aside from the dogma and, the unconditioning I had to do for myself, um, what was beautiful about that was something about faith and mystery and something greater than myself. Somehow that was important for me as a young child. And I still held that inquiry. Like as a teen, I was like, why is there suffering? Why am I on the planet? What can I do about it? And who am I in relation to God? And if there's a God, like what is that? So I just had those questions as a kid. So I think that's why I had the courage because it was an interest. You don't pursue anything unless you have desire.
Do you think that it is easier as a kid or maybe an undeveloped brain, let's put it that way, to
Sure.
develop these skills rather than, because we talk about the blank slate, right? We talk about,
Yeah,
people growing up and at 25 years of age, your brain like stops being neuroplastic, which is completely false, by the way.
it
There's new
is completely
research. But
totally.
but let's just go with that, right? Like I think there is an importance of the developing state up until 25 around there in some way. Do
Yes.
you think that it's maybe easier for children to acquire these skills and more difficult for adults or
100%. It's already there. It's already there. And then it's not as hard as an adult. You have to go backward and you have to undo and unthread all this crap and conditioning that you've taken on and assumptions you've taken on and ideas about who you are and such. Whereas a child is so fresh and open and like in their heart and in their spontaneity if they haven't had major trauma or aren't living with fear, right? They're just like living, discovering, and often already know so many things. They already know and are so in tune. Very young children have told me things they remember about where I came from. Like I remember being in the stars, like random things. Oh, I remember being inside my mom. Like there's still that is so fresh, and then it just gets lost. Or my son used to see, and he could tell me like, oh yeah, I see color. I asked if you see anything around people because I said some people can. I don't naturally. He's like, oh yeah, I see that. Now that was when he was young. So that's so fresh. But then once you're in a collective that doesn't talk about that or in any way acknowledge that there are beings other than, someone in the physical form. Lots of kids see deceased people, you know, like, so if that was supported and adults weren't so fearful of it, or like parents knew how to communicate with it, some parents have asked me, like, what should I say when my kid says da da da? Then it would stay, it would more naturally stay. So, of course, it's easier for them to learn a more advanced skill or how to discern what some of that is, but it might be more difficult in terms of the wide openness of the imagination to find the lines, right? Because the maturity of me and other isn't there. The cognitive development isn't there in the same way.
let's double click on that. Because we talked about mass consciousness as one of the
Yeah.
meta narratives. Why are people afraid of this? Because to me, that doesn't make any sense in exploring this. On the one hand, we say that we're human beings, we all have this ability, but on the
Yeah.
other hand, we're all afraid of knowing ourselves in any, more intimate way. We're all, not all, I guess I shouldn't say all, but mass
Yeah.
consciousness is afraid of exploring these avenues of thought and inquiry. How is
Yeah.
that possible?
I know. I think it's just general, a few things. I mean, you could probably come up with the same. General that we're afraid of the unknown in general. Like people are afraid of AI because we don't know how it's all going to turn out. In general, I'm afraid of the unknown. And there's conditioning around people having powers, people having certain power. Oh, if you can see something, you might have power over me. What if you could hurt me? Well, I mean, all of that, any individual, we rely on people's morality, right? Like people hurt each other physically and through physical violence all the time. Um, so openness in ability to see and know something about someone else, being very open in that way, um, it requires walking also with discernment and consciousness of your own morality and ethics, right? Because if I could pick up something about you or someone else, if I wanted to, oh, I want to look in, I want to know something about themselves or about that person, uh, it just wouldn't be ethical, right? So we kind of rely on that in all these different contexts.
Well, you talked about the ego before, and I really want to go on that route
Sure.
because it seems like one of my fears, again, in exploring this, is how do you know that you're not going to be corrupted by it? How do you not use these tools for harm? You know, like when you have a
Sure.
hammer, everything looks like a nail. How
Yeah.
can you not, you know, like how did Alexandra, or I guess younger Alexandra,
Yeah.
not see this ability to understand people way before? Because it's not just about the woman with the shoulder pain. It's
Yeah.
about, oh, you have access to information that even she's not aware of. How do you use that
Yes.
against her, right? How did you work through that?
Yes, well, it is a bit of an ego trip at first because here I am like experiencing these different things, seeing other times, like seeing other timelines and information about myself, about others. Um, and then the mind does start to think, oh, like I'm kind of special or I'm kind of important or how could I use this or what could this get me, right? And we often think about what could this get me in my own life. Um, but anyway, I remember seeing these parts of the ego, and it really requires the discernment that comes from knowing the mind. And really, we only know the mind if you truly want to sit and observe it, because it's easy to get distracted and subtly like buy into, oh, I'll just do this. Nobody will ever know. Right? But I had a teacher and a mentor as I was developing, and so she could see things that I couldn't. I was watching my ego as best as I could because at the time the point was enlightenment, dissolving all ego. So I had that desire, and also I'm a young woman who like has different fears and is developing and all sorts of things. So it could go off sideways, when I see that I can access information about people or about myself or have more information than some people have. Anyway, so she kept me in check. I was seeing her regularly enough that she kept me in check. And a lot of times